Does satire let people be more crass, more honest about taboo topics? Letting poetry be the medium for satire takes the analysis back to oral epics. Satire reliably enables more crassness and directness on taboo topics. The form itself acts as a rhetorical pressure valve. By framing the message as exaggeration, irony, or absurdity, the author or performer creates plausible deniability. It's just a joke, or I'm highlighting the absurdity. This lowers social and institutional guardrails that normally police plain speech. Why it works: psychological and social distancing. Audiences process satire in a playful, critical mode rather than a literal one. This lets writers deploy vulgarity, bodily functions, sexual excess, or sacred cow slaughter that would trigger backlash in earnest prose or policy discussion. Aristophanes, Lysistrata, and the Clouds are packed with dick jokes, fart humor, and savage mockery of Athenian politics and Socrates stuff that would get a modern writer canceled or sued in some eras if stated flatly. Swift's A Modest Proposal calmly suggests cannibalism to expose indifference to Irish poverty. The crassness is the point. It shocks the audience into seeing the underlying truth more sharply. Taboo efficiency. Taboos often cluster around sex, power, religion, ethnicity, class, resentment, and bodily reality. Satire weaponizes them. Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, or modern examples like South Park episodes on terrorism, religion, or identity politics say things straight commentary cannot. Empirical pattern across cultures where direct criticism risks exile, prison, or fatwa. Satirical verse, plays, cartoons, and stand-up thrive as release valves, Charlie Hebdo being a tragic test case. Limits: it doesn't grant infinite license. Effective satire still needs wit, timing, and some grounding in recognizable truth, or it collapses into mere offense. Poor satire still looks like bigotry with extra steps. Poetry as medium in the return to oral epochs. Shifting satire into poetry does pull the form back toward aural roots pre-Gutenberg, even pre-widespread literacy. This is a feature, not a bug. Oral culture dynamics, Walter Ong, Eric Havelock, etc., in primarily oral societies, knowledge and critique traveled through rhythm, meter, alliteration, and performance. Poetry was mnemonic technology, easy to memorize, recite, and spread virally in taverns, forums, or courts. Homer, the Old English flighting tradition, insult battles. Arabic hijah, satirical poetry, and Roman verse satirists Juvenal and Horace all operated here. The ear processes rhyme, cadence, and hyperbole viscerally and emotionally before the rational mind fully engages. This favors raw embodied language. Crassness lands harder when chanted or sung. Protective ambiguity, oral poetic satire lands on metaphor, persona, and indirection. A bard could mock a king more safely in verse than in plain speech because it was art. The musicality creates emotional distance while amplifying the sting. Written prose satire, post-printing press, can be more analytical and footnote-heavy. Poetic satire stays closer to the body and the crowd. Modern echoes, rap battles, slam poetry, and even Twitter or X threads with rhythmic insults retain this oral DNA. They reward performers who can improvise taboo-cracking lines that hit in real time. Literary literacy lets us archive and analyze it, but the power remains in the ear and the voice. In short, satire is a cultural technology for honesty under constraint. Pairing it with poetry dials it back to its performative pre-literate strengths. Memorial, visceral, shareable, emotionally subversive. It doesn't make the taboo vanish, it just lets us speak it more freely by making the medicine go down as entertainment. The pattern holds from ancient Athens to stand up stages today. The crassness isn't a side effect, it's often the delivery system for the unwelcome truth. It's a sophisticated view of satire as rhetorical pressure valve. How the transition to poetry reflects the form to its natural, to its oral. It reconnects the form to its oral roots, specifically citing the mnemonic technology of oral cultures. By moving away from the analytical prose of the Enlightenment and back toward rhythmic and performative, satire regains its viral quality. By building on the poetry, taking analysis back to its oral epochs, we can look at how the shift specifically bypasses the modern literalist trap. The oral epoch and the bypass of literalism is a print-dominant culture. We tend to treat each text as a static contract. Satire in prose often gets fact-checked or stripped of its irony because the eye reads for data. Otherwise, you note with Walter Ong's theories, oral culture is agnostic, centered on struggle, competition, and is participatory. Rhythmic trance, meter, and rhyme create a predictable pattern that lowers the audience's cognitive ego defense. When a satirist uses a heroic couplet or a limerick to discuss something crass, the brain accepts the rhythm before it can censor the taboo content. The mask of the bard. In oral traditions, the speaker is often a persona. Poetry formalizes this distance because the words are constrained by verse. They are seen as crafted rather than confessional, giving the poet more room to be honest about ugly social realities without audience assuming it is a personal manifesto. The crassness as truth seeker is the point. In oral satire, the use of the low bodily functions, sexual taboos, serves a specific democratic function, leveling. Element function in oral satire. Hyperbole distorts the powerful until they are unrecognizable and thus no longer frightening. Invective, verbal flighting that tests the social standing of the target through wit rather than force. Mnemonic sting, a well-tuned satirical poem like those of Alexander Pope or Lord Byron stays in the much longer than an essay, making the taboo truth impossible to forget. The return of the viral voice. Today we see this returning in digital spaces. While we are a literate society, our consumption has become neo-oral. Rap battles, slam poetry, and even Twitter or X threads with rhythmic insults retain this oral DNA. This is exactly why a satirical song or rhythmic rant often gains more traction than a long-form op-ed. The visceral nature of the sound makes the crass element feel like a shared secret between the performer and the listener rather than a clinical violation of social norms. In utilizing poetry, the satirist isn't just being fancy, they're using an ancient encryption method that allows the medicine of truth to bypass the gatekeeper's polite literalist society. How do you think the shift of the communal experience of oral satire, like a play or a tavern song, to the private digital orality of headphones and screens changes the way we process these taboo topics? It's a revival recipe for oral tradition. Think of people who were without sight now being flooded with easy content. This revival recipe suggests that we are moving into a period of secondary orality. If the print era was a long period of sight focused on the silent, linear, and analytical processing of text, the digital and podcasting age is indeed a sudden flood of sound. When satire enters this oral flood, it changes how we digest crass or honest truths. In purely visceral, visual, literate culture, information is a commodity we look at. In an oral culture, information is an environment we inhabit. The mechanics of the oral revival, to understand how this functions as a recipe for resensitizing a blinded public, we look at the specific ingredients that poetry adds to the satirical mix. The loss of the back button. In an oral tradition, you cannot skim a poem in the way you scan a page. The listener is captive to the performer's timing. This allows the satirist to lead the listener down a garden path of rhythmic beauty before hitting them with a crass or taboo revelation at the turn of a rhyme. The return of the somatic. Sight is a distant sense. Hearing is a contact sense. Sound physically vibrates the ear, while satire is poetic and aural. The taboo topic isn't just an idea, it's a vibration. This makes the honesty feel more undeniable because it is felt in the body. Collective resonance. Print is a solitary act. Aurality is communal. When a crowd, even a digital one, hears a satirical verse, the taboo is broken simultaneously for everyone. The shared laughter, the gasp, provides the social cover needed to discuss the honest topic that was previously unspeakable. Flooded with easy content, acoustic indifference, sound is everywhere. We stop listening. Poetry in the satire becomes the essential filter. Mnemonics is survival. In a flood of easy, garbage content, only the rhythmic and witty survive. Plain text rant is forgotten in an hour, and a satirical couplet with a sharp meter can live in the ear of a culture for centuries. Pattern recognition. For those without sight, who've lost the ability to critically analyze text, poetry acts as a new set of spectacles. The meter provides a structure that easy content lacks, helping the listener distinguish between mere noise and a pointed, honest critique. The evolution of the medium. Epic, primary mode, satire's role, primary orality, performance/memory. To preserve social norms or mock their violation in real time. Literate era, analysis, print, to deconstruct systems through logic and irony, the bookish satire. Secondary orality, digital/viral sound, to puncture the easy content flood with memorable rhythmic honesty. By using poetry as the medium, the satirist isn't just telling a joke. They're building a vessel that can float on the flood of content. It turns the crass into something catchy and the taboo into something communal. While hearing involves physical vibrations, touches the eardrum, it's classified as a distance sense. While sound is indeed a mechanical sense, relying on physical pressure waves, it is formally classified as a distance sense, telereceptive, because it allows us to perceive objects and events that are not in direct physical contact with our bodies. However, your revival recipe for the oral tradition actually gains strength if we look at why hearing feels more like contact than sight does, even if the classification says otherwise.